Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The Dawi engineers have cooked up something special today as a flame cannon has been brought to fight off the horde of Norsca. So for this matchup today, we have the Dawi versus the Norskens. We have Tank leading the Dawi forces, and I will be leading Norsca. So for the Dawi forces, we do have some long beards in the front line, and they will hold up very well against pretty much anything that the Norskens will likely come to throw at them. So pretty much the Norskens going to need something other than just their Marauders to break through that front line, and they do have plenty of tools for that job. But behind them, there's some miners with blasting charges that can really just absolutely decimate Marauders, especially with their low armor. They'll do such good work there. And then for the big monsters, they do have some Uthar's Raiders and the Iron Drakes with the Trollhammer Torpedo. So Uthar's Raiders, the ROR variant, they do have a little ability that makes their targets weaker to ranged attacks. So minus 30 armor, minus 22 missile resistance, and minus 24 missile parry, marked by Uthar. So that will help, especially against any of the large targets, mammoths, chariots, and the like. And they do have Grombrindle, the white dwarf, will be leading the forces with his smoke bomb, and of course, Grombrindle has no fear, giving all of his units unbreakable for a short period of time. And then behind there, we do have some more ranged units with some Rangers and some Quarrelers as well. Not actually a bad unit here. Rangers and Quarrelers, any of the missile missile units can do quite a bit of good work against Norsca, especially, as I said, with their low armor. And of course, we do have some Slayers in the back line to protect the kind of high value targets. So there's 3 units of those, one of which is the Dragonback Slayers, the ROR variant, which gives a nice little slow to anything that they are able to get in contact with. And some more miners with blasting charges in the rear, with another Longbeard as well. They really just protect this flame cannon and especially the Iron Drakes and Ulthar's Raiders. These 2 units are going to be very important for the Dawi. Now, for the Norsken Forces, we have the War Mammoth War Shrine, a really large target, generally quite a risk to bring against the Dawi, but the whole plan here is that you have a lot of targets for the Dawi to shoot at. So there is we also have Wulfric the Wanderer on his chariot with Seafang and Hunter of Champions, and he will be supported by some Marauder chariots. But for the front line, it is going to be Marauders, just 5 units of those, one of which is the Icehorn Marauders, who do have immune to Psychology and Perfect Vigor. We have a Fimir Balefiend of Shadows going to be bringing Enfeebling Foe and Pendulum. Pendulum very good against the Dawi. It does do magic damage, but of course it does break through that very high armor that the Dawi have. There's also a pair of Norsken Ice Trolls. They do have regen, they have frostbite, and they have armor piercing values as well. So again, they're a large target. So like the Iron Drakes and the Ulthar's Raiders, they're very nice targets for them, but there are 2 units of those, and there's the War Mammoth, so the Dawi really just need to pick one. And at this point, there's so many targets for them that something is going to survive until the late game. There is also a pair of Feral Manticores, normally brought to deal with the Gyrocopters that the Dawi often bring in this matchup, but there are none of those here today. And now in the far flanks, we do have some Norsken Warhounds, 3 of those, looking to get some juicy little backline charges into some Iron Drakes, some Flame Cannon troops, and the like. So let's get this game underway as the armies do approach one another. The War Mammoth getting a little ahead of the rest of the forces and kind of doing a little spin around, trying to dodge a few shots coming in as the Trollhammer torpedoes do move up and start opening up into that War Mammoth, and they will do a ton of damage. Just look how much damage that War Mammoth has taken so far. Marked by Uthar does go down on it, giving it lower armor, lower missile resistance, and it is just getting lit up. And that flame cannon is doing a ton of work as well, just decimating these Marauders. But here comes a nice Pendulum ripping through miners and Longbeards, doing a ton of damage. A very nice cast here, and here comes the Feral Manticores looking to jump down on top of these Iron Drakes, but it is a little too late as that War Mammoth is already routing off, just taking insane amounts of burst damage from those Iron Drakes and Uthar's Raiders. But in comes the charge of the Warhounds and Wulfric getting into the Rangers, as well as shutting down that flame cannon, at least for the time being. But there are Slayers and Longbeards there that can do quite a number on those chariots. Otherwise, these other units are trying to shut down these miners, but these miners just absolutely wasting these Norsken Warhounds at point-blank range, as they did not get their charge off in time, and they will be routed off. And another nice Seafang goes down, ripping right through those Quarrelers. But the frontline engagement, we have some routing Norsken Ice Trolls, but otherwise the front line is actually kind of collapsing a bit for the Dawi, as Uthar's Raiders and these Troll Hammers are both being attacked by the Feral Manticores. But of course the Dragonback Slayers are doing a ton of damage to them as well, trying to repel them as quickly as possible. But the Norsken Ice Trolls also trying to get on top of them, just shutting them down as quickly as they can. But they are taking a bunch of damage themselves, and they are going to be routing off the field. But we do have Wulfric the Wanderer on top of Grombrindal the White Dwarf, and he has 100 champions on, but also Grombrindal has no fear, giving the entire army a nice bit of sustainability, allowing them to stay in the fight for as long as possible as the Norskens do collapse upon their formations. We do have these Norsken Ice Trolls routing. This Feral Manticore has routed as well, and the Iron Drakes are back online, at least for the time being. But Wulfric is looking to shut that down as quickly as he can, going in and out of this formation. And Grombrindal has no fear, has worn off, so things are going to be able to start routing again for the Dawi. We do have some units coming back for the Norskens on the far flank, as they do try and come back into this fight. Some more miners with blasting charges opening up on what's left of the units, but these Slayers are relentless and trying to get after Wulfric the Wanderer, as he does kind of pull out and get into a nice little rear charge to his Longbeards and these miners. But right now, Grombrindal seeing a little isolated unit, as the Fimir Balefine of Shadows is engaging with Grombrindal, and Grombrindal will do a ton of damage. And also the Iron Drakes are also firing into him as well, and he is a fairly decent-sized target to be firing in. Also Uthar's, or the Quarrelers, but a nice Seafang rips through these miners and Longbeards as well, trying to do a bunch of damage. And in comes Wulfric and the Norsken Ice Trolls, returning to try and save the Fimir Balefine of Shadows in this late game, and we'll see if he is able to survive. He does have his Arcane Conduit, getting a little bit more magic regen back, but Wulfric is getting a little surrounded by some Slayers right now, and in comes the War Mammoth as well. Still has quite a bit of HP left, though it does look like he is fairly low. And Wulfric will pull out, at least for the time being. These Warhounds getting on top of the Quarrelers, shutting them down, routing them off, and they have been able to push things off pretty well for the time being, as they're chasing off these flame cannons. And Uthar's Raiders as well are quite a ways out of the fight for the time being, and those Warhounds should be able to keep things chased off, as are the Iron Drakes with the Troll Hammers not using a whole lot of ammo, unfortunately. But it looks like the Slayers are going to be able to bring down the War Mammoth once more, as it does rout, and it is kind of collapsed by a lot of miners here. The Norsken Warhounds, or not the Norsken Ice Trolls do try and pull out away from these Dragonback Slayers, trying to engage with the miners and avoid them at all costs at this point, because they will just absolutely do a number on them. And Wulfric himself is getting fairly low. He was wavering for a second, but he is chasing Grombrindal down as best he can, though he is going to be hounded by some Slayers as well as some Longbeards. But he does have the speed advantage against all of the Dawi forces, and he is able to rout off Grombrindal, and the Slayers are going to still be in hot pursuit, though if Wulfric is able to peel them off and deal the final blow to Grombrindal, that will be a major help for the Norskens here in that late game. But the collapse from the Norsken Ice Trolls onto the rest of the miners here are just breaking them very, very quickly and shattering them, as that is going to be army losses pretty much for the rest of the Dawi forces, and it's just going to be Slayers left, and Slayers will not be enough to finish off this horde of Norskens here, as, I mean, the Marauders themselves will be able to beat down those Slayers fairly well, and that is going to be our game for today, as the Norskens do beat the Dawi front line, and a final little Seafang just going to be shooting after these miners as they do rout off, and it is just down to this last unit of Slayers. Only a few units left, and they are quickly getting mulched by these Warhounds and these angry Norsken Ice Trolls, and that is going to be it, down to just 8 models, as this the final collapse of the Dawi forces. So as soon as the Slayers do fulfill their final oath. We will look into the after battle report and go over kind of the battle a little bit here. Just one final slayer, and down he goes. So taking a look at the results, I mean, the flame cannon early on, it had some very nice shots into the approaching Norsken forces, but only 85 kills. I mean, just the cost of the flame cannon, generally, that's not going to make its worth back. The Iron Drakes with Ulthar's Raiders, not a whole lot of kills on them, but they did so much damage to that War Shrine so early on, and it was able to push it off, like, pretty much before the rest of the Norskens were really able to collapse in. The Feral Manticores did jump on those Iron Drakes fairly early, but it was too late for that War Shrine to really be a factor. But that was kind of the whole point of that build, is that you have the War Shrine, which can just absorb all those shots, and those shots aren't going towards your Norsken Ice Trolls, your Chariots, or Wulfric himself, as it'll absorb all that and then keep on going. But eventually, those Warhounds did collapse upon the back line, and they were able to push, essentially just chase off everything and anything that routed from the Dawi. Grombrindal actually was probably a fairly good choice here, with his Grombrindal Has No Fear able to hold that everything in the battle for as long as possible, even with the collapse of the Norskens. But I do like the Miners as well, because they just destroy Marauders with their blasting charges. They do so much damage there. And of course, Slayers, maybe 3 is potentially a little too much. But otherwise, yeah, the Norskens were just collapsed upon the Dawi so quickly. Norsken Ice Trolls pushing through that front line, and of course the Sea Fangs and Pendulums were on point in this matchup, doing a ton of damage to that front line, breaking them very quickly. But that was a very fun match, and I do hope you all enjoyed the battle. And as always, have a good one.